Sophie Lane stopped screaming when her throat began to burn. The freezer was so cold that every breath stabbed her lungs like broken glass. Frost clung to the metal shelves around her. Boxes of aged beef towered like silent witnesses in the blue-white dark. The emergency light above the door flickered weakly, turning the room into something between a kitchen and a grave. She slammed her palm against the steel door again. "Please!" she cried, but her voice came out thin, cracked, barely human. "Somebody. Please." No one answered. Outside the freezer, the expensive steakhouse continued breathing. Silverware chimed. Rich men laughed over glasses of whiskey. A pianist played something slow and elegant in the dining room, soft enough to make cruelty sound civilized. Sophie pressed her ear against the door. Nothing. Her fingers had gone numb. Her black waitress uniform, already damp from spilled water and kitchen steam, clung coldly to her body. She wrapped her arms around herself, but her hands shook too hard to hold still. Bianca Mercer's voice still echoed in her mind. "You should have just lied, Sophie." Then the shove. The door slamming. The lock clicking from the outside. Sophie slid down the wall, knees trembling, breath turning white in front of her face. She thought of Mila asleep in their tiny apartment with the neighbor watching her. 5 years old, curly hair, pink blanket. One front tooth missing. A child who had already lost one mother and did not know how close she was to losing another. Sophie tried to stand again. Her legs failed. And then, somewhere beyond the freezer door, she heard a sound that did not belong to the kitchen. Silence. Not normal silence. Not empty silence. The kind of silence that happened when powerful men stop speaking. Outside, in the private dining room of the Sterling Room, Vincent Romano lowered his whiskey glass without taking a sip. He had noticed the missing waitress 8 minutes ago. At first, he told himself it meant nothing. People disappeared in restaurants all the time. Shifts changed. Managers barked orders. Waitresses avoided private rooms full of dangerous men in dark suits. Ordinary women had instincts. Smart ones kept distance. But Sophie Lane had not looked at him like he was a monster when she served his table. That was the first thing he noticed. Not her body, though other men had made comments when she passed. Not her plain black uniform, or the soft roundness of her face, or the way she pulled her hair back with a pencil when her clip broke. He noticed her hands. They shook slightly when she poured wine for his men. But she did not spill a drop. And when one of his soldiers, Enzo, snapped at her because his steak was too rare, Sophie did not flinch. She simply looked at him with tired brown eyes and said, "I can fix the steak. I can't fix your manners." The table had gone deadly quiet. Vincent had looked up then. Most people feared his name before they feared his face. Vincent Romano was the kind of man people recognized even when they pretended not to. Tall, cold, controlled. Dark hair combed back from a face that looked carved for judgment. Tattoos disappeared beneath the cuffs of his black dress shirt. His hands were calm. His eyes were worse. Men in Dallas did not raise their voices around him. Women did not insult his soldiers. But Sophie Lane had said it without drama, without performance, and without realizing that every man at that table had killed for less. Vincent should have been amused. Instead, he had been interested. Now she was gone. He turned his head slightly. "Where is the waitress?" His men stopped moving. Across the room, Calvin Mercer, the owner of the Sterling Room, smiled too quickly. He was a polished man with silver hair, a tailored jacket, and the anxious eyes of someone who had spent years bowing to richer men. "Which waitress?" "Mr. Romano." Vincent stared at him. Calvin's smile weakened. "The curvy one," Enzo muttered, before Vincent's eyes cut toward him. Enzo lowered his gaze. Sophie. Her name tag said Sophie. Vincent rose. Every conversation in the private dining room died at once. Calvin stepped forward. Mr. Romano, please. If there was a problem with service, Vincent lifted one hand. Calvin stopped. From somewhere behind the kitchen door came a faint sound. Not loud, not clear. A broken little cry. Vincent turned toward it. Something ancient and violent moved through him. He walked past Calvin without another word. His men followed. The kitchen staff froze as Vincent pushed through the swinging doors into the hot, bright chaos of the back kitchen. Chefs stopped mid-motion. A pot hissed. A line cook dropped a towel. Vincent's gaze swept the room once. Where is she? No one answered. Then he heard it again. A weak pounding. 3 taps. A pause. 1 tap. From the freezer, Vincent moved so fast that one of the cooks stumbled backward to get out of his path. He reached the freezer door and gripped the handle. Locked. His jaw tightened. Open it. The kitchen manager fumbled with a ring of keys. His hands shook so badly he dropped them. Vincent did not wait. He stepped back, pulled a gun from beneath his jacket, and fired once into the lock. The sound cracked through the kitchen like thunder. Someone screamed. Vincent kicked the door open. Cold air spilled out in a white wave. Sophie fell forward. He caught her before she hit the floor. For one suspended second, the entire restaurant seemed to vanish. She was freezing. Her lips were pale. Her lashes glittered with frost. Her body trembled violently against him. And her hands, blue at the fingertips, clawed weakly at his shirt, as if she did not know whether he was real. Vincent looked down at her. Her eyes opened halfway. Fear passed through them first. Then recognition. Then humiliation. Sharp enough to make his chest tighten. I didn't lie, she whispered. Vincent's voice came out low and dangerous. I know. Behind him, Bianca Mercer appeared at the kitchen entrance in a white silk dress, diamonds shining at her throat, her perfect face draining of color. Vincent did not look away from Sophie. Who locked this door? No one spoke. Sophie's body convulsed with another shiver. Vincent slid one arm beneath her knees and lifted her fully against his chest. She made a small sound. Not protest exactly, but pain mixed with pride. I can walk, she breathed. No, Vincent said. One word. Finale. He carried her through the kitchen, past stunned cooks, past whispering servers, past Bianca Mercer, standing frozen like a statue that had just realized marble could break. When Vincent stepped into the dining room with Sophie in his arms, every rich guest turned to stare. The pianist stopped playing. A senator's wife covered her mouth. A businessman slowly stood, then sat back down when he saw Vincent's face. Sophie tried to hide her face against his chest, but Vincent shifted her higher, shielding her from the room with his body. Eyes down, he said. No one understood at first. Then Enzo turned toward the room, hand beneath his jacket. Every guest looked away. Vincent carried Sophie out through the front doors of the Sterling Room into the Dallas night, where rain had begun to fall softly over the black SUVs waiting at the curb. The city glowed gold and wet around them. Sophie heard cameras clicking, phones rising, whispers spreading. The Mafia boss of Dallas carrying a half-frozen waitress out of a luxury steakhouse. A scandal before midnight. A death sentence before dawn. Vincent lowered her into the back seat of his SUV. He climbed in beside her, not touching her more than necessary, but close enough that his heat reached through the cold trapped in her skin. His driver pulled away. Sophie looked toward the restaurant shrinking behind them. My job, she whispered. Vincent turned to her slowly. She hated the softness that cracked her voice. I need that job. A muscle moved in his jaw. You nearly died in that kitchen. I know. And you are worried about a paycheck? She looked at him then. Really looked at him. Frost still melting on her lashes. I'm worried about rent, groceries, daycare. A little girl who asks me every morning if I'll come home after work. Vincent went still. There were few things in the world that could surprise him. A waitress with frostbitten fingers and pride in her throat did. You have a daughter. Sophie hesitated. Not because she was ashamed. Because the world was crueler to women who had something to lose. My niece, she said finally. Mila, my sister died 2 years ago. I'm all she has. Vincent looked away first. Outside. Rain ran down the tinted windows in silver lines. Dallas blurred into neon and headlights. His men spoke quietly in the front seats. But Vincent heard none of it. He was thinking about the freezer door, about Bianca Mercer's face, about Sophie whispering, I didn't lie, and about the fact that the hidden camera he had installed in the Sterling Room's kitchen 3 weeks ago had gone dark exactly 12 minutes before Sophie disappeared. That was not coincidence. That was war. The doctor who treated Sophie did not work in a hospital. He worked out of a private clinic behind an unmarked door on the 32nd floor of a glass tower downtown. The waiting room had no magazines. The nurses did not ask questions. The windows looked out over Dallas like the city belonged to whoever could afford the view. Sophie sat on the examination table wrapped in heated blankets. Her hands submerged in warm water while the doctor checked her pulse. Vincent stood by the window. He had not left. That bothered her more than it should have. She knew men like him existed in stories people told quietly. Men who owned judges, frightened politicians, and made other powerful men laugh too loudly in their presence. Vincent Romano did not look like a man who belonged in a clinic with a half-frozen waitress. He looked like a storm forced into a suit. You should go back to your dinner, Sophie said, voice hoarse. He turned. His eyes moved over her face, then her hands in the basin. My dinner is finished. I ruined it. No. He walked closer, stopping at a careful distance. Someone made a mistake. The way he said mistake made the word sound like a coffin being lowered. Sophie swallowed. I don't want trouble. You have it. I didn't ask for it. Trouble rarely asks permission. The doctor glanced between them, then cleared his throat. She needs rest, warmth, and monitoring for the next 24 hours. Mild hypothermia, early frostbite, but I think her fingers will recover. Sophie closed her eyes briefly. Her fingers, she needed her hands. To carry plates, to button Mila's coat, to braid hair, to survive. Vincent noticed the way her breath shook. Leave us, he told the doctor. The doctor left without hesitation. Sophie looked up. You don't get to order everyone around me. A faint pause. Then Vincent's mouth almost moved. Not a smile. Something more dangerous because it was smaller. You were locked in a freezer for refusing to lie. I assumed you preferred honesty. I do. Then be honest. He stepped closer. What did Bianca Mercer ask you to lie about? Sophie's stomach tightened. She looked at her hands in the water. The truth sat cold inside her. Almost as cold as the freezer. She asked me to say, I saw one of the busboys go into your private room while your men were outside. Vincent's expression did not change, but the room seemed to... Which busboy? Mateo. Nina then. He sends money to his mom in El Paso. He was washing glasses all night. And why would Bianca want him blamed? Sophie took a breath. Because someone did go into your room. Vincent was silent. Sophie looked up. It was her. The rain hit the windows harder. Vincent's eyes sharpened. She went in while the owner distracted your man at the bar. Sophie continued. She came out with a black envelope under her clutch. I didn't know it was yours. I only knew she looked scared. Then she told me if anyone asked. I saw Mateo near the room. And you refused. Yes. Why? The question made her angry. Maybe because the answer was too simple for his world. Because he didn't do it. Vincent studied her. In his life, loyalty was purchased, threatened, inherited, or buried. He had seen men betray brothers for less than the cost of a bottle on Calvin Mercer's wine list. He had watched women kiss their husbands while selling secrets to enemies. He had never trusted innocence, because innocence was usually a mask worn by skilled liars. But Sophie Lane sat in front of him with thawing hands and exhaustion beneath her eyes. And she had risked everything for a busboy who could offer her nothing. It made no sense. That fascinated him. That irritated him. That made him want to keep looking. Sophie pulled her hands from the basin and wrapped the blanket tighter around herself. I answered your question. Now I need to go home. No. Her head snapped up. No. You are not going home tonight. Something flashed in her eyes. Fear first, then anger. Bright and immediate. I am not one of your men. I know. You can't just decide where I sleep. I can, when the woman who tried to kill you is connected to the people trying to kill me. Sophie went very still. There it was. The hidden blade beneath the velvet. Vincent watched understanding move across her face. What was in that envelope, she asked. Names. What kind of names? The kind people die for. Sophie slid off the examination table too quickly. Her knees almost buckled. Vincent moved, but stopped himself before touching her. She noticed. The almost touch hung between them. I have to get Mila, she said. My men are already on their way. Her face changed. No. No. You don't send strange men to my apartment for a child. Sophie. The sound of her name in his mouth silenced her for half a second. He said it like he had already decided it mattered. Then she hated that it did. You don't get to make me feel safe by taking control away from me, she said. Vincent absorbed the words without blinking. Most people begged him to take control. This woman demanded he earn the right. He reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He dialed, put it on speaker, and held it toward her. A small, sleepy voice answered. Aunt Sophie. Sophie nearly broke. Mila. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Baby. Are you okay? Mrs. Alvarez said, I get to have hot chocolate. Are you coming home? Sophie closed her eyes. Vincent looked away. Not because he was uncomfortable, because something in the child's voice struck a locked room inside him. I'm coming soon. Sophie whispered. I promise. Be good. Okay. Okay. Mrs. Alvarez says men in suits are downstairs. Sophie shot Vincent a look. He spoke calmly toward the phone. They will not come near you. Mila. The child went quiet. Who are you? Vincent paused. Sophie watched him. The most feared man in Dallas. Questioned by a 5-year-old in pajamas. My name is Vincent. Are you Aunt Sophie's friend? Sophie opened her mouth to say no. Vincent's eyes stayed on hers. I'm trying to be, he said. For some reason, that was worse than a lie. By morning, the video was everywhere. Not the freezer, not the truth, only the ending. Vincent Romano carrying Sophie Lane out of the Sterling room in his arms, her face hidden against his chest. His men surrounding them, rain falling hard around the black SUVs. The headlines wrote themselves. Mafia Boss's Mystery Woman. Dallas Waitress saved by Vincent Romano. Romano seen leaving steakhouse with curvy server after private dinner. By noon, the comments were cruel enough that Sophie stopped reading. Gold digger. Set up. She knew what she was doing. Women like that always want attention. She sat on a white sofa inside Vincent's penthouse, with Mila asleep against her side, watching her own humiliation loop silently on a massive television screen. Vincent stood behind her, remote in hand. He turned it off. The screen went black. Sophie stared at her reflection in the glass. A borrowed sweater hung loose on her shoulders. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She looked smaller than she felt and more tired than she wanted him to see. "I need my phone," she said. "No. You're very comfortable with that word. When it is necessary. It's necessary for me to call my manager." "Your manager is missing." She turned. Vincent watched her absorb it. Missing. Since 2 this morning? What about Bianca? At her father's estate behind 6 gates and 12 armed guards. Sophie rubbed her forehead. Mila stirred beside her, clutching the pink blanket Vincent's men had somehow retrieved from the apartment. Sophie lowered her voice. "I should go to the police." "You can. But the detective assigned to organized crime in Dallas had dinner with Calvin Mercer last Thursday. The judge who signed the Mercer liquor license renewal plays golf with Bianca's fiancé's father. And the man who took the envelope from my private room controls half the police union through donations." Sophie looked at him coldly. "So the law belongs to whoever pays more." Vincent's face remained calm. "In Dallas, usually." "You say that like it doesn't bother you." "It bothers me when my enemies buy what should already belong to justice." Sophie almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're a criminal." "Yes." The honesty disarmed her. Most men like him would have dressed the truth in nicer words. Businessman, investor, family man, protector. Vincent Romano simply stood in a penthouse above the city and confessed without apology. "Then why should I trust you?" she asked. He came around the sofa, stopping in front of her. "Not too close. Never too close unless danger required it." "You shouldn't." The answer made her blink. His eyes held hers. "But you should trust that I hate betrayal more than I want your obedience." The silence after that felt too intimate. Sophie looked away first. Across the room, Mila woke and sat up. Her curls were flattened on one side, cheeks warm from sleep. "Is this a castle?" Vincent turned. "Sophie A. Seahead." "No, baby. It's just an apartment." Mila looked around at the marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and view of the Dallas skyline shimmering after rain. "It's a castle." Vincent's men pretended not to hear. One of them, a huge soldier named Rocco, looked emotionally unprepared for the pink blanket. Mila pointed at Vincent. "Are you the king?" Sophie choked softly. Vincent stared at the child. Then, very calmly, he said, "No." Mila thought about it. "You look like the bad king in cartoons." No one breathed. Sophie closed her eyes. "Mila." For the second time in 12 hours, Vincent almost smiled. Smart girl. That afternoon, Vincent showed Sophie the hidden room. It was behind a wine wall in his penthouse, accessible only by his palm print. Sophie did not want to enter, which was exactly why she forced herself to walk inside. The room was dark, lined with screens. Security footage played silently from different locations across Dallas. Warehouses, restaurants, parking garages, hotel corridors. The Sterling Room kitchen before the camera went dark. Sophie's stomach turned when she saw herself on one of the screens, carrying plates, smiling at customers who did not smile back, standing near the private dining room with a tray balanced on one hand. "You were watching me?" she asked. Vincent heard the accusation beneath the words. He deserved part of it. "The restaurant," he said. "Not you. But I'm on the screen. You work there. That doesn't make it better." "No," he admitted. "It doesn't." She looked around the surveillance room, pulse quickening. What is this place? A map of betrayal. He moved to the central screen and rewound footage from the previous night. Sophie watched Bianca approach the private room. Calvin Mercer intercepted Enzo at the bar. The hallway camera flickered once. Then Bianca slipped inside. When she emerged, she held her clutch too tightly. Sophie folded her arms around herself. "Where's the footage of her locking me in?" Vincent's jaw hardened. The kitchen camera died 90 seconds before it happened. Convenient. Professional. She looked at him. "So this was planned?" "Yes." "Not just Bianca being cruel." "She is cruel. But cruelty is rarely organized. This was..." Vincent switched screens. A photo appeared. Bianca Mercer standing beside a handsome blonde man in a white dinner jacket. His hand rested at the small of her back. His smile was charming in the way knives were shiny. "Luca Carbone," Vincent said. "Heir to the Carbone family out of New Orleans. They have been trying to move into Dallas for 2 years." Sophie stared at the photo. "Bianca's fiancé. Are publicly. He is a shipping investor. Privately, he sells loyalty by the pound and buries what he can't buy. And she's helping him. She thinks she's going to be his queen." Sophie's eyes moved back to Vincent. What was in the envelope? "This time," he answered, "proof that someone inside my family gave the Carbones the route of my brother's convoy 6 months ago." The room seemed to lose oxygen. Sophie's anger softened before she could stop it. "Your brother died." Vincent did not look at her. He was 28. He trusted easily. "I warned him not to." The words were cold. The wound beneath them was not... Sophie recognized that kind of pain. The kind folded so tightly into a person that it became posture. "I'm sorry," she said. Vincent's gaze cut back to her, sharper than before, as if sympathy was an intrusion. "Don't be." "Why?" "Because if you pity me, I might start believing I deserve something gentler." Sophie had no answer for that. For a moment, there was only the hum of machines and Mila's laughter faintly echoing from the living room, where Rocco had apparently been defeated by a coloring book. Then Sophie noticed another screen, a still image of her apartment building. She stepped toward it. Vincent's expression changed. Too late. Her face closed. "You're watching my home. For protection. You put cameras outside my apartment. After last night..." "How many?" "4. Inside." "No." The answer came fast. Hard. Absolute. Sophie believed him. She hated that too. "You don't get to invade my life and call it protection." Vincent moved closer, his voice low. "The Carbones know your name. Because of you." "Yes." The admission landed between them. He did not excuse it, did not soften it, did not lie. Something about that made Sophie angrier, because it gave her nowhere to put her fear. "My life was hard before you walked into it," she said, "but it was mine." Vincent's eyes stayed on her face. "And if I leave you alone, they will take it from you. Then tell me how to survive without becoming yours." For the first time, Vincent had no immediate answer. The word yours hung in the room. Possessive. Dangerous. Unwanted. Not entirely untrue. His phone buzzed. He looked down. Read the message. And his expression became stone. What Sophie asked. He turned the screen toward her. A photo had been sent from an unknown number. Mila at the playground 2 days earlier. Before Sophie had ever met Vincent. Zoomed in. Watch from a distance. Under it were 5 words. The waitress should have lied. Sophie's knees weakened. Vincent caught her elbow. This time, she did not pull away immediately. His hand was warm, steady, controlled. They knew about her before last night. Sophie whispered. Yes. Why? Vincent's eyes darkened. Because Bianca did not choose you randomly. That evening, Vincent told her the truth about the Sterling room. They sat across from each other at his dining table, while Mila slept in a guest room, guarded by 2 men and a woman named Talia, who looked like she could break a wrist without wrinkling her suit. Sophie had refused dinner until Vincent ordered soup and bread instead of steak. She ate because pride did not feed fear. The Sterling room belonged to my mother's family before Calvin Mercer took over operations. Vincent said, on paper, he owns it. In reality, I do. Sophie set down her spoon. You own the restaurant. Through a trust, and you let people like Bianca run it. I let them believe they had control. Why? To see who they would sell it to. Sophie stared at him. The pieces aligned slowly. The private dinner. The cameras. The envelope. The missing manager. Bianca framing Mateo. Sophie trapped in the freezer. You used the restaurant as bait. Yes. And everyone inside it. His silence answered first. Sophie pushed back from the table. I was bait too. No. But I was there. I didn't know they would use you. That doesn't change anything. Vincent stood. His control was still perfect. But something behind it had begun to crack. It changes everything. To you. To anyone with a conscience. She laughed once. Bitterly. Do you have one? His eyes hardened. Not enough to be harmless. The honesty hit harder than any defense. Sophie walked to the window, looking out over the city. Below, Dallas glittered like nothing ugly ever happened beneath its lights. I spent years serving men who thought money made them gods. She said, I learned how to smile when they looked through me. I learned how to carry plates while women like Bianca laughed at my body. I learned how to go home, wash the steak sauce out of my uniform, and tell Mila that kindness still matters. Her voice trembled, but she did not let it break. Then I finally tell the truth once, and the whole world punishes me for it. Vincent stood behind her, close enough that she felt him, but not close enough to touch. The world punishes truth because truth threatens ownership. She turned her head slightly. And what do you do? His voice lowered. I punish the people who think they can own it. A dangerous shiver moved through her. It should have frightened her. It did. But fear was no longer alone. That was the problem. Vincent received the invitation at midnight. A cream envelope, hand-delivered to his penthouse lobby by a courier who was gone before the cameras caught his face. Inside was a single card. The Carbone Foundation, Charity Gala, Saturday night, the Adolphus Hotel. Bring the waitress. Sophie read it twice. No. Vincent took the card from her hand. You won't be there as yourself. I won't be there at all. If we refuse, they move against Mila. Sophie's face went pale. Vincent hated himself for using the child's name, but he hated the truth less than he hated comfort. What do they want? She asked. To see whether I value you. I'm nobody. He looked at her. The room shifted. You stopped being nobody the moment they locked you in that freezer. Sophie's pulse betrayed her. Vincent looked away before he could enjoy it. The plan was simple in the way dangerous things were simple. Sophie would attend the gala at Vincent's side under a false identity. Talia would stay with Mila at a safe house outside the city. Vincent's men would surround the hotel. Sophie would wear a hidden microphone. She would identify Bianca's voice, Luca Carbone's face, and anyone connected to the theft of the envelope. In exchange, Vincent promised her one thing. When this is over, Mila gets a new identity, he said. Clean documents, safe school, apartment in another state if you want it, money enough to start again. Sophie studied him. And me. His eyes lifted. What about you? Do I get to start again too? Or do I remain part of your map of betrayal? Vincent's expression did not change, but the question cut him. You get whatever life you choose, even if I choose one far away from you. The silence stretched. His answer came too late. Yes. Sophie heard the lie and the delay. So, did he? On Saturday night, Vincent Romano walked into the Adolphus Hotel with Sophie Lane on his arm. And Dallas forgot how to breathe. She wore a deep emerald dress that Talia had chosen because it made her eyes look warmer and her curves look unapologetic. Sophie had nearly refused it when she saw herself in the mirror. She was used to clothes designed to hide her, soften her, apologize for her body before strangers could judge it. This dress did none of that. It made her visible. That terrified her more than the hidden microphone beneath the neckline. Vincent waited outside the dressing room, eyes fixed on his phone, until she stepped out. He looked up and stopped. Sophie's nervous hand moved toward her waist. Don't, he said. She froze. Don't what? Shrink. The word was quiet. It entered her like warmth. He approached, slowly enough to give her time to retreat. He held out a black velvet box. Inside lay diamond earrings. Sophie shook her head. No, they're not a gift. Good. They're armor. That's worse. His eyes almost softened. Almost. Everything beautiful in that room will be used as a weapon. He said, tonight. You use it first. She let him fasten the earrings. His fingers brushed her neck once. Both of them went still. The touch lasted less than a second. The tension lasted all evening. At the gala, chandeliers blazed above marble floors. Violins played from a balcony. Women in silk turned their heads as Vincent entered. Men who had been laughing moments before straightened like soldiers before a firing squad. And then they saw Sophie. Curiosity moved through the room like smoke. Who was she? Why was she with him? Why did he keep his hand at the small of her back like a warning? Bianca Mercer stood near the champagne tower in a red gown, her diamond necklace glittering at her throat. When she saw Sophie alive, dressed like a woman who belonged beside power, her expression cracked for half a breath. Sophie saw it. So did Vincent. Breathe, he murmured. I am. Convincingly. She inhaled. His thumb pressed once against her back. Not comfort. Not exactly. A command to stay standing. A promise that she would not stand alone. Luca Carbone approached with a smile built for cameras and funerals. Vincent Romano, he said. Dallas looks good on you. Vincent's voice was calm. It looked better before you arrived. Luca laughed as if they were old friends. His eyes moved to Sophie, lingering just long enough to be insulting. And this must be the waitress. Vincent's hand shifted slightly. Every man behind him noticed. Sophie felt the room tense. But before Vincent could speak, she did. And you must be the man who needs women to do his stealing. The silence was instant. Bianca's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Luca's smile sharpened. Vincent looked at Sophie. Not angry, Fascinated. Dangerously proud. Luca leaned closer. Careful? Sweetheart, this room is full of people who bite. Sophie held his gaze. Even as fear crawled up her spine. I work in restaurants. I know rats when I see them. One of Vincent's men coughed into his fist. Vincent did not smile, but his eyes warmed in a way that felt more intimate than touch. Across the room, cameras flashed. By morning, the city would have another headline. Vincent Romano brings mystery waitress to Mafia-linked gala. But tonight, the scandal served a purpose. People watched Sophie. And because they watched Sophie, they failed to notice Talia moving along the balcony above them, photographing every man who reacted when Luca whispered the word freezer. The first shot came during the charity auction. Not a gunshot, a camera flash. Then another. Then a scream. A massive screen behind the stage flickered, glitched, and changed from donor names to security footage. Sophie's apartment building. Mila's school. Mrs. Alvarez's front door. Sophie went cold. Vincent saw her face and turned just as Luca's voice echoed through the speakers. Some women are born to serve. Some forget their place when dangerous men look at them. The room erupted in whispers. Sophie could not move. The screen changed again. A video of her from the Sterling room, carrying plates, bending to pick up a dropped napkin while Bianca and her friends laughed. Then a still image of Vincent carrying her from the restaurant. Text appeared beneath it. Romano's weakness. Vincent's face became unreadable. That frightened Sophie more than anger would have. He removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders before stepping in front of her, blocking the room's view. Look at me, he said. She could barely hear him over the noise. Vincent, look at me. She did. His eyes held her in place. They want you ashamed. Her breath shook. They know about Mila. They know what I allowed them to know. She flinched. Wrong words. He saw it immediately. But before he could repair the damage, the ballroom lights cut out. The world plunged into darkness. Screams rose. A body slammed into Sophie from the side. Vincent caught her waist and pulled her down behind an overturned banquet table as glass exploded above them. His body covered hers, hard and warm and terrifyingly steady. Men shouted. Women cried. Shoes scraped over marble. Sophie's cheek pressed against his chest. She heard his heartbeat. Calm. Too calm. You're okay, he said against her hair. I'm not. You're alive. The rest can wait. Something in her broke open at that. Not love. Not trust. Something more dangerous because it was need. Vincent lifted his head, issued orders in Italian, and his men moved like shadows around the ballroom. No wild panic, no wasted violence, just precision. A man rushed towards Sophie from the dark. Vincent turned and struck him so fast. Sophie barely saw the movement. The man hit the floor and did not get up. Sophie stared. Vincent looked back at her. There was blood on his knuckles, but none on his face. His breathing had not changed. You should be afraid, he said. I am. Good. He reached for her hand. She took it. They escaped through the service corridor. Vincent's jacket still around her shoulders. Her emerald dress torn at the hem. Sirens screaming somewhere outside. In the hotel kitchen, between stainless steel counters and stacks of plates, they nearly collided with Bianca Mercer. She was crying, or pretending to. Sophie, Bianca gasped. Thank God. I was looking for you. Vincent raised his gun. Bianca stopped. Sophie stepped out from behind him. No, you weren't. Bianca's face shifted. The helpless mask slipped just enough to reveal the ugly thing beneath. You have no idea what you're in the middle of. I know you locked me in a freezer. Bianca's eyes glittered. You should have stayed there. Vincent moved. Sophie grabbed his arm. Don't. He looked at her hand on him. Then her face. She tried to kill you. And I want her alive enough to tell the truth. Bianca laughed, sharp and shaking. Truth. Men like him don't want truth. They want useful women. That's all you are. Sophie. Useful. Soft. Grateful. Easy to control. Sophie stepped closer. Vincent let her. That's what you never understood. Sophie said quietly. I wasn't kind because I was weak. I was kind because I refused to become someone like you. For 1 second, Bianca looked genuinely wounded. Then her hand moved toward her clutch. Vincent fired. Not at her. At the tile beside her foot, Bianca screamed and dropped the clutch. A small transmitter skidded across the floor. Vincent's men seized her before she could run. Sophie looked at the transmitter, then at Vincent. She was broadcasting the whole time. Vincent's face darkened. Yes. Who was listening? His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Luca Carbone's voice came through. Smooth as poison. Touch Bianca. And the little girl disappears. Sophie stopped breathing. Vincent did not move. Luca, he said softly. You have 10 seconds to convince me you are not already dead. Luca laughed. Check your safe house. The call ended. The drive to the safe house became a blur of rain, sirens, and Sophie's pulse roaring in her ears. Vincent made calls. His voice stayed controlled. That control became unbearable. Sophie sat beside him in the SUV, gripping Mila's pink hair ribbon in her fist. You said she was safe. Vincent looked at her. She was. You promised. His silence was worse than an apology. Sophie turned away, tears burning hot after so much cold. I trusted you. Vincent's hand flexed once against his knee. Those 3 words did what bullets rarely could. They hurt him. The safe house was not burning when they arrived. That was the first mercy. The second was Talia, alive but injured, sitting on the front steps with a gun in her lap and murder in her eyes. The third mercy did not come. Mila was gone. Sophie made a sound Vincent would hear for the rest of his life. Not a scream. Not a sob. A small, broken denial. He reached for her. She shoved him away. Don't touch me. He stopped. Rain fell between them. Around them. His men searched the house, checked cameras, gathered shell casings, whispered updates. Vincent heard none of it clearly. He watched Sophie walk into the child's empty room. The pink blanket was on the bed. One of Mila's shoes lay near the closet. Sophie picked it up and held it against her chest. Vincent stood in the doorway. For the first time in years, he did not know where to put his hands. I will get her back, he said. Sophie turned. Her eyes were devastated, but not weak. Do not make me another promise you can't keep. He accepted that like a sentence. Then she said something worse. I should have lied. Vincent's face changed. No. If I had lied for Bianca, none of this would have happened. No. My niece would be asleep right now. Sophie, do you know what truth costs women like me? Her voice rose, shaking. Men like you get revenge. Men like Luca get power. Women like Bianca get protection from rich fathers. Women like me lose jobs. Almonds. Children. We pay for everyone else's wars. Vincent stood completely still. Because she was right, and because he loved her, the realization did not arrive gently. It entered him like a blade. Not soft, not sweet, not the kind of love poets ruined with flowers. This was darker, sharper, a vow forming in bloodless silence. He had been fascinated by her honesty, then protective of her courage, then furious at the world for touching her. But standing in that doorway, watching Sophie clutch a child's shoe like it was the last piece of her own heart, Vincent understood the truth. If the world took Sophie Lane from him, he would burn the world down and still consider it mercy. He stepped back, not because he wanted distance, because if he stayed, he would touch her. And she had told him not to. "You're right," he said. Sophie stared at him. "This is my war, my trap, my enemies, my failure." His voice remained calm, but every man listening in the hall lowered his eyes. "I will bring Mila home. Not because you trust me, not because you forgive me, because I owe you a debt no apology can pay." Sophie's face twisted. "I don't want debt." "I know." He turned to leave. "Vincent." He stopped. She swallowed, rain and tears shining on her face. "If you kill everyone, will she come back the same?" The question held him at the edge of his own nature. Slowly, he looked back. "No." "Then don't go as a monster." The old Vincent would have ignored that. The old Vincent had survived by becoming exactly what enemies feared. But Sophie was looking at him like she believed there was still a man beneath the weapon. And for reasons he could not forgive. He wanted her to be right. "I'll go as whatever brings her home," he said. The clue came from the freezer. At 3 in the morning, while Vincent's men tore Dallas apart, Sophie sat wrapped in a blanket at the safe house kitchen table, staring at Bianca's transmitter in a plastic evidence bag. Everyone thought she was in shock. She was not. Shock was cold. Sophie was burning. She replayed the night in pieces. Bianca's shove. The freezer. The pounding. The faint voices through the vent when she had stopped screaming to save air. At the time, she thought she imagined them. Now she remembered. Not words. Sounds. A train horn. Metal scraping. A man saying, "Cold storage opens at 4. She stood so abruptly the chair hit the floor. Vincent turned from the next room. "What is it?" Sophie pressed her palms against the table. "The freezer vent," she said. "I heard a train horn." Vincent came closer. "There's no train near the Sterling room." "No. But there was one in the background when the men were talking through Bianca's transmitter. I thought I was hallucinating." Vincent's eyes sharpened. "What else?" "Cold storage opens at 4. Rocco cursed quietly. Talia, pal butt alert, lifted her head. "The old meatpacking district." Vincent was already moving. Sophie followed. He turned. "No." Her face hardened. "That little girl is mine. And you are exhausted." "I said she is mine." Vincent stopped. Their eyes locked. Every person in the room felt the collision. He wanted to lock her in safety. She wanted to run into danger. He understood suddenly that loving Sophie Lane would never mean owning her fear. It would mean standing beside it without trying to silence her. "Body armor," he said to Talia. Sophie blinked. Vincent looked at her. "You come with me. You listen when I tell you to move. I'm not one of your soldiers." "No." His voice lowered. "You're the reason they're going to survive tonight." The meatpacking district sat beneath the eastern edge of Dallas like the city's forgotten scar. Old brick warehouses lined wet streets. Rusted tracks cut through alleys. Fog gathered low beneath yellow security lights. The cold storage facility had been abandoned for years, though refrigerated trucks still moved in and out under false company names. Vincent's SUVs arrived without headlights. No dramatic speeches. No wasted time. Sophie sat in the back seat wearing a bulletproof vest beneath Vincent's black coat. It was too large for her, heavy with his warmth and the faint scent of cedar and smoke. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes did not. Vincent noticed. He noticed everything now. "You stay behind me," he said. She nodded. He studied her face. "Sophie, what? If you see Mila, you run to her. Not to me. Not to anyone else. Her." The words struck her strangely. He was telling her to choose the child over him, as if there was any other choice, as if part of him needed to say it. "What about you?" she asked. His gaze held hers. "I have survived worse than men like Luca Carbone." "That isn't an answer. It's the only one I can give you and still walk in there." The almost confession hung between them. Rain ticked softly against the roof. Then Enzo opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Inside the facility, everything smelled of metal, old meat, and bleach. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere deeper inside, a child cried. Sophie moved before anyone could stop her. Vincent caught her wrist gently but firmly. "Listen." She froze. The cry came again. Too distant. Too perfect. Recording. Sophie's face changed. Vincent released her wrist. Pride flickered through his eyes. She had heard it too. They moved through the corridor in silence. Vincent's men spread out. Talia took the upper walkway, despite her injury. Rocco disabled a camera. Enzo found 2 guards and dropped them without a sound. Then, Luca's voice came through the facility speakers. "Touching. Vincent, you brought the waitress to the place where she almost died once already." Sophie's stomach turned. Ahead, through a glass wall. She saw a refrigerated chamber. Inside stood Mila, alive, crying, hands tied in front of her with a soft cloth. A stuffed rabbit at her feet. Sophie broke. "Mila." Mila lifted her head. "Aunt Sophie." Vincent grabbed Sophie around the waist as she lunged forward, pulling her back just as a red laser dot trembled across the floor where she would have stepped. A shot cracked from above. Glass shattered. Vincent spun, shielding her with his body as fragments rained down. His men returned fire. The chamber door remained locked. Luca emerged on the upper walkway. Bianca, beside him, her perfect hair disheveled, her face twisted with fear and resentment. "This is what you chose," Luca shouted. "A waitress, a child. You could have had half the Gulf routes. Vincent, you could have married into clean money and buried your brother's death like a man." Vincent stood in the open, gun lowered at his side. His calm was terrifying. "You talk too much." Luca smiled. "And you care too much." He lifted a remote. Sophie saw Vincent's eyes move to it. A dead man's switch. The cold chamber behind Mila hummed louder. Bianca stared through the glass at Sophie. "You ruined everything," she screamed. "He looked at you like you mattered." Sophie, shaking with terror, stepped beside Vincent. He glanced at her. She did not move behind him. "Not this time." "No," Sophie said, voice trembling but clear. "You ruined everything because you thought being wanted was the same as being loved." Bianca flinched. Luca rolled his eyes. "Enough." He pressed the remote halfway. The chamber temperature display began dropping. Mila cried harder. Sophie's breath vanished. Vincent raised his gun. Luca shook his head. "Shoot me." And the door stays sealed. She freezes while you prove how dangerous you are. The world narrowed. Sophie stared at the chamber door. The keypad. The emergency release behind a locked side panel. The old restaurant freezer had a safety latch inside, but someone had disabled it. Here, the safety release was external, painted red, covered by a steel guard. She looked at Vincent. He saw the thought before she spoke. No, I can reach it. No, you keep him talking. No, Vincent. His name and her voice did something fatal to him. Not because it was soft, because it trusted him enough to argue, I can do this. She said. His eyes burned into hers. For 1 second, the entire war paused between them. Then he gave the smallest nod. Sophie moved. Not fast at first. Not obvious. She stumbled as if overwhelmed. One hand against the wall. Bianca laughed. Luca barely looked at her. To them, she was still the waitress. Still the soft body in the uniform. Still the woman who could be humiliated. Locked away. Dismissed. Vincent stepped forward, drawing Luca's attention. My brother trusted someone in my family. Vincent said, You didn't kill him alone. Luca smiled slowly. At last, pride betrayed him. No, he said. I didn't. Vincent's eyes went dead. Who? Luca leaned against the railing. Ask your uncle. A flicker passed across Vincent's face. Sophie saw it even from 10 feet away. Betrayal. Not surprise. Worse. Confirmation. His uncle. Sal Romano. The man who raised him after his father died. The man who had urged him to marry Isabella Vega. The man who had told him grief made him weak. Vincent had suspected. Now he knew. Luca lifted the remote again. Sophie reached the side panel. Bianca saw her. She's at the door. Everything happened at once. Vincent fired at the light above Luca, plunging the walkway into sparks and shadow. Talia shot the remote from Luca's hand. Rocco charged the stairs. Enzo dragged Bianca back as she screamed. Sophie grabbed the steel guard over the release. It would not move. Inside the chamber, Mila sobbed her name. Sophie pulled harder. Her frostbitten fingers screamed with pain. She thought of the freezer, the cold, the door, no one coming. Then Vincent was beside her. Blood darkened his sleeve, but his face was calm. Together, he said. They pulled. The guard snapped free. Sophie slammed the red release. The chamber door opened. Mila ran straight into Sophie's arms. Sophie dropped to her knees and held the child so tightly, both of them sobbed. Vincent stood over them, gun in hand, body angled between them and the room. Luca Carbone tried to crawl toward the fallen remote. Vincent walked to him. Sophie covered Mila's ears. She did not watch. But Vincent did not kill him. Not there. Not in front of Mila. He crouched beside Luca and spoke too softly for anyone else to hear. You wanted to know my weakness. Vincent said, You were wrong. Luca laughed weakly. Was I? Vincent looked back at Sophie holding Mila in the cold light. Then he turned to Luca. She is not my weakness. She is the last thing keeping me human. By dawn. Luca Carbone was in federal custody, with enough evidence attached to his name to bury 3 generations of his family. Bianca Mercer turned state witness before breakfast. Calvin Mercer fled Dallas and was arrested in a private airfield bathroom with 2 passports and Sophie's missing tip envelope in his jacket pocket. The public story was messy. A charity gala scandal, a restaurant trafficking investigation, a mafia-linked kidnapping, a waitress who became the unlikely witness that broke open a war. The truth was worse. Vincent's uncle had sold his brother's route to the Carbones in exchange for an inheritance transfer hidden inside the Sterling Room Trust. Sal Romano had never wanted Vincent to control Dallas. He wanted a marriage alliance. Clean money. A quieter air. He wanted Vincent obedient. Instead, Vincent brought Sophie Lane to the Romano mansion on a Sunday evening and started a war at his own dinner table. The mansion stood beyond iron gates, beneath a bruised purple sky. Candles burned in tall windows. Men gathered in the dining hall, old world and dangerous, speaking in low voices beneath portraits of dead Romanos who had probably ruined every woman who ever loved them. Sophie did not want to be there. Vincent knew. Still, she came. Not for him, she told herself. For Mila's future, for the truth. For the right to look powerful men in the face when they decided the lives of ordinary women were acceptable collateral. Mila stayed with Talia at the penthouse. Sophie entered the mansion beside Vincent wearing a simple black dress and no jewelry except the diamond earrings from the gala. Armor, he had called them. Tonight, they felt like proof she had survived. Sal Romano sat at the head of the table. Silver-haired, elegant, smiling like a priest at a funeral. "Nephew," he said, "you bring guests to family business now." Vincent pulled out a chair for Sophie. "She is family business." The room went silent. Sophie's heart slammed once. She looked at him. His face revealed nothing. Sal's smile thinned. "Careful. Sentiment has already cost us enough." Vincent sat. "Sentiment did not kill Matteo." "You did." Every man at the table went still. Sal sighed softly, almost sadly. "Your brother was weak." Vincent's hand tightened around his glass. Sophie saw the crack in his control and placed her hand on the table near his. Not touching. Near. A choice. Vincent looked at it. Then at her. The storm inside him steadied. Sal noticed. His eyes moved over Sophie with cold disgust. "So this is what turned you against Blood, a waitress?" With a sad story. Sophie felt the insult land. For once, it did not enter her. Vincent leaned back. "No. She reminded me blood means nothing without loyalty." Sal laughed. "You think she loves you? She fears you. Women like her cling to power because life gave them none." Sophie spoke before Vincent could. "I don't cling to him." Sal's Gaza, slight to her. The room held its breath. Sophie's voice did not shake. "I've been afraid of him, angry at him, protected by him, betrayed by his secrets. But I do not cling." Vincent watched her like she had become the only light in the room. Sal smiled cruelly. "And what do you do?" "Miss Lane." Sophie looked at Vincent. Then back at Sal. "I stand. A small thing. A devastating thing." Vincent rose. "Esu. Do I?" He placed a folder on the table. Inside were bank transfers, call records, witness statements, and a signed confession from Luca Carbone implicating Sal Romano in Matteo's death. The men around the table shifted away from Sal. Power changed hands quietly at first. Then, violently, Sal reached for the gun beneath the table. Vincent was faster. The shot shattered a wine glass beside Sal's hand. Nobody moved after that. Vincent's voice was calm. "You are done." Sal looked around the table, realizing no one would stand for him. His eyes returned to Sophie. "You made him weak." Vincent stepped closer. "No," he said. "She made weakness unacceptable." Sal was taken away before midnight. No blood on the marble. No screaming. Just an old man, dragged from a throne he had mistaken for a birthright. Outside, beneath the mansion portico, rain began again. Sophie stood at the edge of the steps, breathing cold air, trying to understand why victory could still feel so heavy. Vincent came to stand beside her. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she said, "You didn't kill him." "No. Because of me." He stared out into the rain. Because of Mila, Sophie turned. And because of you, he admitted. The words were quiet. No music swelled. No dramatic confession wrapped them in softness. But Sophie felt their weight. Vincent Romano had changed the shape of his revenge because she asked him not to become a monster. That was not romance in the easy sense. It was more dangerous. It meant she mattered inside the part of him that made final decisions. I don't know what to do with that, she whispered. His gaze lowered to her mouth, then rose again. He stepped closer. Slowly. She could have moved away. She did not. I don't either, he said. His hand lifted toward her face. Stopped. The space between his fingers and her cheek trembled with restraint. Sophie's breath caught. Why do you always stop? She asked. His eyes darkened. Because when I touch you, I want it to be something you choose, not something you survive. The sentence broke something open in her chest. She reached up and took his hand. Then she placed it against her cheek. Vincent closed his eyes. Just once. Eiford. As if the touch hurt. As if it saved him. Weeks passed before Sophie returned to the Sterling room. By then, it had a new name. Lane House. Vincent had given her the building. She refused it. He expected that. So he changed the paperwork. Not a gift. A foundation. A restaurant and training program for women leaving dangerous homes. Single mothers needing work. Young servers with no protection. People who knew what it meant to smile while being humiliated and still go home kind. Sophie cried when she saw the sign. Then she yelled at him for making her cry in public. Vincent stood on the sidewalk in a black coat, hands in his pockets, watching her with the quiet satisfaction of a man who had conquered cities and found this victory stranger than all of them. You hate it, he asked. I hate that you did something beautiful without asking. I'm learning. You're terrible at it. Yes. Mila ran ahead to press both hands against the front window. Is this our castle now? Sophie laughed through tears. Vincent looked at the child. Then, at Sophie. No, he said. It's hers. Inside. The freezer had been removed. In its place was a wall of warm copper lights and framed photographs of the women who worked there. The kitchen doors were painted blue. The dining room was bright, elegant, and alive with flowers. Sophie walked through it slowly, touching table edges, chair backs, the polished bar. At the back of the room, where the freezer door had once stood. Vincent had placed a small brass plaque. No one gets locked away here. Sophie stared at it, her vision blurred. Vincent stood behind her, silent. You remembered, she whispered. I remember everything about you. The words should have frightened her. Maybe they did. But fear had changed. It was no longer the terror of being trapped. It was the trembling edge of being seen too completely. That night, Lane House opened quietly. No press. No politicians. No men who laughed too loudly at women carrying plates. Just staff, family, and a few guests who had earned the right to sit at Sophie's tables. Near closing, Sophie found Vincent alone in the kitchen. He stood where the freezer had been. Sleeves rolled up. Tattoos visible along his forearms. Staring at the copper lights like they were a language he was trying to learn. You look uncomfortable, she said. I am. Good. He turned. She had changed out of her opening night dress into a soft sweater and black pants. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked tired. Warm and real. His favorite version of beautiful. I have something for you, he said. Sophie immediately narrowed her eyes. If it's another building, I'm throwing bread at you. It isn't a building. He reached into his pocket and took out a key. Not gold. Not diamond. A simple brass key on a plain ring. Sophie looked at it. What is that? The last key to my house. She went still. Vincent held it out but did not step closer. I have given keys to men who would die for me. Men who fear me. Men who obey me. But never to someone who can leave whenever she wants. Sophie's throat tightened. Vincent, I'm not asking you to move in. I'm not asking you to become part of my world before you decide it won't destroy yours. I'm giving you a way in and a way out. Her eyes filled. He continued, voice low. You once asked how to survive without becoming mine. She remembered. Every word. His gaze held hers. This is my answer. Don't become mine. Choose me. Every day you want to. And on the days you don't, use the key to walk away. A tear slipped down her cheek. Vincent did not wipe it away. Not until she nodded. Then his thumb brushed the tear from her skin with a tenderness so controlled it almost broke her. What if I'm scared? She whispered. You will be. That's not comforting. I won't lie to you. She laughed softly through tears. No, you never do. His hand remained near her face. This time, he did not stop because of fear. He stopped because the choice belonged to her. Sophie rose on her toes and kissed him. The first kiss was not gentle. It was not sweet enough to be simple. It carried the freezer, the rain, the gala, the cold storage room, the child's shoe, the mansion, the almost touches, the anger, the trust rebuilt in fragments, sharp enough to cut them both. Vincent held himself still for half a second. Then his control broke carefully. One hand slid to her waist. The other cupped the back of her head. He kissed her like a man who had spent his life refusing hunger and had finally found something worth starving for. When they parted, Sophie rested her forehead against his chest. His heart was not calm now. She smiled. Your heart is racing. Vincent's arms tightened around her. It knows who it belongs to. Outside, Dallas glittered beneath a clean night sky. Black SUVs waited at the curb. Engines low. Shadows patient. Inside Lane House, Mila slept in a booth under Talia's watch. A pink blanket tucked beneath her cheek. Rocco quietly washed dishes because Mila had declared him too big to be useless. Enzo argued with a dishwasher and lost. And in the warm kitchen where Sophie Lane had once nearly died, Vincent Romano held her like a vow. Months later, people in Dallas still whispered about the night the Mafia boss heard a waitress crying behind a freezer door. Some said she changed him. Some said he saved her. The truth was more complicated. Sophie had not made Vincent harmless. Love did not turn dangerous men into saints. But she had taught him that power without tenderness was just another locked door. And Vincent had not made Sophie fearless. Love did not erase the memory of cold steel, cruel laughter, or the sound of a child crying behind glass. But he had stood beside every fear until it learned his name. On the first anniversary of Lane House, Sophie stepped outside after closing and found Vincent waiting in the rain. Not inside the SUV, outside it. No umbrella. Black shirt damp at the shoulders. Tattoos visible beneath rolled sleeves. Hair wet from the storm. A feared man standing beneath a street lamp like a ghost from the night everything began. Sophie crossed her arms. You know we have a perfectly good doorway. I know. You're getting soaked. Yes. Are you being dramatic? His mouth almost curved. I was remembering. She softened. The rain painted silver lines down the windows behind her. What? He looked at the restaurant sign. Then at her. The first time I carried you out of that place, you were freezing. Sophie stepped closer. And now, His eyes moved over her face with quiet devotion. Now you're the warmest thing in my life. For once, Sophie had no clever answer. Vincent reached into his coat and removed a small black box. Her breath caught. He did not kneel. Not yet. Instead, he placed the box in her hands. Open it only if you want the question, he said. Sophie stared at him through the rain. And if I don't, then keep the box. Throw it away. Sell it. Hide it in a drawer. I will still be outside when you need me. Her lips trembled. You really learned how to ask. No, he said. You taught me how to wait. Sophie opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike anything Bianca Mercer would have worn. No giant diamond meant to blind a room. No cold display of ownership. A deep green stone surrounded by small diamonds. The color of the dress Sophie had worn the night she stopped shrinking. Her eyes filled. Vincent finally lowered himself to one knee on the rain-slick sidewalk. Across the street, one of his men pretended not to cry. Mila pressed her face against the restaurant window, saw what was happening, and began jumping silently with both hands over her mouth. Sophie laughed and cried at the same time. Vincent looked up at her. Rain on his face, power at his back, devotion stripped bare in his eyes. Sophie Lane, he said, voice steady. I cannot promise you a life without danger. I cannot promise my world will ever become gentle. But I can promise you this. No door closes on you again. No one makes you small again. No enemy reaches you alone. And every version of me that survives from this day forward belongs beside you. If you'll have him. Sophie looked down at the man everyone feared. And for the first time, she saw not the king Mila had joked about. Not the monster Dallas whispered about. Not the weapon his enemies had created. She saw the man who had heard her cry when no one else listened. The man who had learned to stop before touching her. The man who had chosen mercy in front of a child. The man who waited in the rain with a key, a ring, and a heart he barely knew how to offer. Yes, she whispered. Vincent closed his eyes. The city did not explode. The world did not soften. The rain kept falling. But when he slid the ring onto Sophie's finger, every black SUV on the street flashed its headlights once. And Mila burst through the restaurant door screaming, Aunt Sophie is the queen now. Sophie laughed as Vincent stood and pulled both of them into his arms. For one perfect moment, there was no freezer, no betrayal, no cold room waiting in the dark. Only rain, warm light, a little girl laughing, and a dangerous man holding the woman who had turned his empire into something worth saving. Vincent bent close to Sophie's ear. You know she's wrong, he murmured. Sophie looked up, smiling. About what? His hand tightened around hers. You were never the queen. He kissed her knuckles. Eyes dark and devoted. You were the reason the kingdom survived.